Welcome back, everybody. This is Lead with Giants TV. My guest this evening is Tanveer Naseer, and he's the author of Leadership Vertigo, Why Even the Best Leaders Go Off Course, and How They Can Get Back on Track. Tanveer, welcome to our show. Welcome to segment 2.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great. And let's do a quick introduction around the room. Tell us where you hanging out from and your name.
I guess we'll start with me. So my name is Tanveer Naseer. I'm an award-winning leadership writer, coach, and keynote speaker. I'm basically based right now in Montreal, Canada.
Great to have you.
That's awesome, Tanveer. I'm Sherry Essner, and I'm going to say I'm president of the PMI Durham Highlands chapter, where we're going to have Tanveer speak on November 6th. Okay, I got my plug in at the Ajax Community Center, and so I am coming to you live from Ajax, Ontario.
Good plug-in, Sherry.
Thank you.
And I'm Liz Stinselli, and I'm coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Great to have you. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about the self-awareness and positive resilience that many leaders now need. We're doing more with less. It's typically the manager, the person who is on salary, is doing more, covering several positions throughout the day, and you talked about emails and so forth, but even just task orientation and where it's difficult for many leaders to do this work-life balance. When you talk to people around the country, is that they never seem to be off work, quote unquote. They're still checking their emails at 10 o'clock at night. They still have to respond or do a project at 10 o'clock at night. I want to ask you, how do you see leaders who can embetter themselves to somewhat create a balance into their life? And you share really some key points into positivity and being self-aware. So Tanveer, talk to us about that.
Well, one of the things we hear a lot about positivity in the workplace, right? And a lot of times the confusion we tend to get, and I see, is that we tend to associate positivity and happiness. And I think it's important that we separate those two, because it's really unrealistic for any of us to be happy 100% of the time. Even the best of us who have a wonderful life, and we all wish we could live that life, they're not 100% happy all the time. So I think when we talk about positivity, what we got to recognize is that what we're talking about here is being able to live a life and doing work that's meaningful. It ties into our core psychological needs, where we feel a sense of purpose and meaning and value in what we do, that we have a sense of autonomy and knowing that we can have some sort of control over our life and being able to make choices, and that we have also that core psychological need of competence, where we know we have the chance to be challenged and engaged in learning new skills and developing our core competencies. So that's what we got to recognize when we're talking about positivity. It's not just the notion of happiness. It's really about having a really forward outlook in terms of an optimistic, realistic outlook in terms of what we're capable of accomplishing and capable of doing through the collective work and through our individual contributions in our organization. And it's also important for us to note that research has shown that when it comes to the idea of positive and negative emotions, okay, and so of course, these are the things where you're happy would be positive, you're angry is negative. And if you're upset, sad, that's also negative, and you feel success, pride, and those will be the positive ones. If you have a negative experience at work, it actually takes 3 positive experiences on that same day to overcome that one negative event. So you could have an employee who they had a bad encounter. One of the things I always hear people say when I give feedback, I start with a positive, right, and then I get into the negative. Well, you know why? A lot of people say that. Notice how none of us really take feedback well. Why is that? It's because the ratio is completely wrong. You can't give one negative and compensate with one positive, because the person's still suffering from the negative. You need to give them 3 positive just so you can get to the 0 level. So you're really looking at getting 4 positive events to you to come home and say, wow, I had a good day today, if you had one negative event. So you can imagine how much pressure that is on us if you think back again about how much managers are doing. And it's true. It's really, really true that how managers are doing so much. So many of the conferences I'm going in the last year, I've noticed what a fundamental change attendees now have when they go to these conferences. I don't think there's a single one who during the breaks actually make time to network anymore. And it's not because they're introverts, it's because they're all busy on their smartphones, not doing Facebook updates and Twitter tweets and Google Plus updates. They're checking in on their office. They got emails to reply to. They got clients they need to respond to who are having a problem with some of their products or the services. They need to call in the office, and so these people come back into these conferences, and sometimes I like to go tend to see the other presenters, but also to observe the attendees, and it's amazing to see how many of them are actually very distracted during these talks. When they're there to learn, they're trying to find new insights. They're completely consumed by what's going on at home because they don't have the luxury anymore, and it is a luxury when you go to a conference that you completely focus yourself on learning and development. So I do think that this is one of the challenges we're seeing in today's organizations where people are overworked, and it's not just the frontline workers, it's now creeping very much up into the management and senior management levels because we are having to do more with less. So how do we compensate for that? And one of the things I've talked in a number of my talks when I address this is how we have to become better as leaders at the art of delegation. A lot of times when we hear people talk about delegation, we talk about it in terms of just give people the stuff you're not good at, the stuff you don't enjoy doing, so you can focus on the things that you want to get done. And the reality is that your employees are not going to be really driven to push themselves to really be strong contributors if you're just giving them the work that really most people don't want to do. What we really need to be doing instead is having those conversations, going back to our first part discussion about community, and understanding what matters to our employees, and then finding opportunities where we can delegate real, genuine work to them that they can help us do, that they can do well because that ties into their core needs, and that will free us up to do other stuff. And this is something that's really challenging for a lot of leaders to do because we're so used to having to be responsible for these type of things that there's that fear of, well, what if they mess up? Now, not only do I have to clean up their mess, but now I got to do the same thing I was going to do myself anyways. And that's why we can't do the old-style delegation of here's this pile of work I want you to do, and then leave them. We actually have to create a roadmap, and that's why Sherry and I were discussing the 360s in the first one. This is where we don't want the 360. We're going to have a discussion with employees saying, I want to delegate this to you because I see you have the potential to develop and strengthen this core competency and become a more valued contributor organization. And build a roadmap, not a time frame, a roadmap saying when they hit certain key points, you're going to start tailing back how much support and guidance you offer them because they're mastering it now. And then eventually what's going to happen is your employees are now going to take on this new workload from you. They're going to feel like, wow, I'm really making a difference in this organization. So now they're going to feel some value, which goes to that whole work-life balance thing we're all struggling with. Because really what we should be looking for, and I've said this in another talk of mine, we should be looking at work-life integration. What is it that people want to feel is going to make them have a purpose-led life? It's not just in the family, it's also at work. We spend a lot of our time at work. So how can we make people feel, just as with their family and personal life, their work life is making them feel some sense of purpose and meaning in their life? And this is how we can do it, by making sure we're giving people that kind of work that's going to make them feel like really engaged in doing purpose-led work in our organizations and freeing us up a bit from the work we have to do so we can focus on those things that we really want to be doing and that'll make us feel like we're really making a difference in our organization.
That's great. A lot to digest there, but I think that it's great information for any leader to. That's one of the toughest challenges right now, as you mentioned, is to have that work-life balance, and no matter what area or what industry you work in. Let me also have the opportunity to have Liz jump in as well to the conversation, please.
So, Tanveer, along those lines, as much as leadership has progressed, I still run into a lot of old school leaders who view employees kind of like robots.
Yep.
You have this task to do, sit at your desk, you do it, don't think, I don't care about your opinion, I don't want to hear your ideas, just produce, 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 produce. And I think that type of leadership mindset prevents them obviously from giving these employees additional responsibilities and delegating down to them. So is there any advice you can give to employees who may be caught in that situation? How can they approach their leader about, hey, recognize me for who I am. I'm not just a task. I'm a person with all of these skills and abilities.
Okay, well, if we look at your question, I think we have our answer right there in terms of the scenario, right? If we're working for somebody who, and what I often talk about people saying is that a lot of times in this crazy pace that we're now working at, it's very easy for leaders to become very task-oriented and see their employees as a means to an end. Even the best of us can see our employees merely as being a means to an end. Now, if by nature of their upbringing, their life experiences, or education, they think, well, leadership is really the buck end stops here, and you just do what I say, and you're just there to do what I'm telling you to do. We can't go into that conversation saying you need to see me as being something more than that, because that's not going to resonate with these leaders. What we need to do instead is recognize that these leaders are also overworked and overwhelmed. So the question then becomes, how do we demonstrate to them how we can help them do their job well? So we need to come into those conversations not saying, well, I want something more, but rather saying how, I noticed that on this particular project we need someone who can do this. I've actually got really well at that, and here's a suggestion I have of how we can address that solution. You'll notice that when we were discussing this problem, we had this issue, and this issue. Here's my strategy of some ideas of how we can address it. Show the initiative of what you can bring to the table to deal with the situation, and what's going to make this boss look good. Because the ultimate end point we have to recognize with these kind of leaders is they're self-driven in terms of their own pride, in terms of their own recognition, in terms of their own influence in the organization. So they're not interested in helping their employees do better. So for employees working with those kind of leaders, you have to work with that kind of personality and mindset and realize you're not going to change them, but you got to work within that box. And the key way to work within that box is to say, I'm going to do work that's going to strengthen in my contributions, make me a more effective worker, and then if the time comes and you want to look for employment elsewhere because you really don't see any latitude for growth here, you've now strengthened your core skill sets that you can now take elsewhere. But hopefully, those in the organization are starting to notice how much you're now contributing to the organization, and will see you as a key talent that they're going to want to keep on, and probably maybe even switch you over to another team so they can continue to grow and develop those competencies. So I think that's the key in those type of organizations, is not to make it about us saying, well, as your employee, I want to develop more, but offer solutions of how you're going to help your leader get some stuff off their plate so they look good, but that you get that opportunity to learn and grow.
Very useful advice. Thank you.
You're
See,
welcome.
I knew we got a superstar here to be on our show today. So good. No, it's good advice, because a lot of us struggle with that, and we think we can change the manager, or we're kind of taking a resistance approach to the thing here. But I think you offered some pretty piece of advice that's very wise, and how to handle it without getting emotionally caught into this, well, it's about me, and so it created this. It does happen in many companies where we've kind of, some of us that are a little bit older are thinking, like the younger generation, we think, well, wait a minute, it's about me. Why is my boss not doing this? So we have that a little bit of a mentality, but I think your advice there was very congruent and can help many people.
Absolutely.
Sherry, I think it's go ahead and ask your friend from Canada some questions here.
Tanveer, I want to turn that coin over that Liz just gave you and say, what do you have to say to the leader who believes that he needs to hold all of his cards close to his heart, and that sharing of the information is giving away his power? Oh no, we lost him!
We lost him. Let's try to invite him again.
Okay.
It's kind of a poor connection with Canada, I take it.
Sherry scared him away.
I think she
Yeah.
did.
It's me. It has to
All right,
be
let
me.
me go
No.
and invite him.
I thought that was a good question.
Apparently he didn't like your question.
No. Isn't he going to be awesome, though? I'm so excited.
He's very
Absolutely.
knowledgeable and has great ideas.
Very practical advice.
Very
Yes.
much so.
Yeah, not this philosophical pie in the sky stuff.
Right.
No,
Exactly.
the reason I really think that you asked a good question, and I was noticing how he was going to answer it, and he answered it very not theoretically. He answered it in how you can apply this
Right.
in your job, whoever that person is, and there's a lot of them, and I actually one of them that I think my boss is doing this to me. So I'm like, yeah, you answered my question too. So let's see if he can join us. I sent him a link.
Are you enjoying this video for all the people out there who are watching this lovely Leads with Giants video? And we're having technical difficulties.
That's okay. This is our moment of vulnerability.
This is, isn't it? I love it. So.
But if he doesn't join us within the next minute or so, we might have to shut the broadcast down. So we'll just
Okay.
wait for him, or we may have to retape it. I'm not sure. See what he wants to do. I don't have any background music to.
You can't edit, and you can't cut
You
and paste
can't.
pieces
You
together,
can't. No, I wish I could, but you can't. This is our first bloopers.
huh?
These are the outtakes, and you get to see them. I think that's great. That's what really makes us vulnerable leaders.
So we'll wait for just a minute and see if he comes back on. If not, we'll have to shut it down just in respect to our audience.
I did a Google Hangout a few weeks ago, and after I told the person my whole life story, I finished talking, and it was their turn. The Hangout went down. Boom. Not to me, right? I said, okay, now that you know my whole life story.
They decided to desert you.
It was so embarrassing. It really was. So, anyway.
Let me send him the link, see if he can join through the link.
Great book. Yes, I have 3 pages worth of questions I could have asked.
You are crazy.
So-
You are crazy. I cannot believe how much stuff she writes down.
I went off script.
I have a bunch too.
You guys are crazy.
Then I think of more, and so I start jotting them down.
No, it's gonna be impossible. He's very much a speaker.
Yes,
so
very
he
much so.
talks. This is the work-life balance for me. I sent him the link, so hopefully he can join us. If not, we'll have to close it up here.
Yes, we are so excited to have him on November the 6th. So, it's going to be just an honor, really, to meet him and see him speak. So I really think that we lucked out when we invited him, and it was before his book came out. So it's just a perfect opportunity for both of us.
Absolutely.
Yes, and the membership is going to love his book.
Wished I lived
There
closer.
he is! Yeah! I wish you did too. Tanveer, I see you. Yeah, he was saying he was having technical difficulties before we started.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. It just doesn't always work. That's the thing. There!
Well,
Yeah!
sometimes it's a connection.
Yay!
Okay, everyone. Sorry about that. It seems my my surge protector just tripped for some reason, so it just kind of shut my thing down.
No problem. Let's just go ahead and pick up. We are still live, so we just kind of let you go back in. But let's go ahead and pick. Sherry is going to ask the last question on this hangout because of the timing and everything. So we'll give her the honor there with that last question. So go ahead, Sherry.
Sure.
Okay, Tanveer, I'm not sure if you heard the question. It was, what is your advice to the leader who believes that he needs to hold all of his cards to his chest, and giving away information such as delegation and that is really giving away his power? That is a very old style of leadership, and yet I'm still running into it, and people still truly believe that that is giving away their power.
Right. Well, again, here we gotta work within that mindset, right? I mean, it's very hard for us to change people's perceptions of how they view their leadership, unless they're open and amenable to it. So, I mean, when we talk about the old school types, I've met a lot of them, and they really are set in their ways in terms of what is it that they want to achieve. So, when we're talking about a leader who thinks, well, I don't want to give away information because that's what's my power base, and I've worked with a number of those leaders, and it's very difficult for them to understand how, in this day and age, information is free and accessible. Everybody is able to find out what they need to do their jobs. It's very hard for us to cover things and to hide things. Apple's probably the best example of that. I mean, every time they come with innovation, we might not get the details right, but we get the overall gist. And so if a company as secretive as Apple can still experience leaks no matter how much their confidentiality agreements might be ironclad and so forth, it just demonstrates to us how it really is not a realistic option to think of our leadership that way. And we got to recognize, too, what is the underlying current behind this necessity to hold on information. These leaders are clearly driven to want to always feel some measure of control. This is one of all of our core psychological needs that we all have. We all want to feel some measure of control over what we do. And so we have to work with these type of leaders to make them feel that they still are in control, they're still in charge, while not necessarily making them think that sharing that information is going to take away from that. So again, just like if we look at Elizabeth's question about how do we get leaders to look at their employees as not just being a cog in the wheel, we got to take it from the perspective of the leader, which is kind of ironic too when you think about it, because if anything, the real job of a leader is not to have people coming into the conversation thinking, well, what is my leader's perspective and how am I going to fit myself within that? A real leader's job is to say, what is the reality my employees face, and how do I work within that to help us achieve our shared purpose? And so, in these cases, these are more people who are leader by title than rather than by how they proceed and act in their role in the organization. So I think in that regards, we really have to work not on the sense of, well, as a leader, you're supposed to do this, but really more that this is how they operate. And if we want to feel like we're making a difference in an organization, let's work within that constraint. Let's imagine it as being one of those constraints that we have in innovation that we now have to work within in order to get the job done. So in this case, we got to make sure that in giving that information, our leader still feels very much in charge and in control, so that that information dissemination doesn't impact his perception or her perception of her leadership.
What a great answer, Tanveer. That is awesome.
Thank you.
So Tanveer, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. You know, we're big fans of your work, and our audience will definitely cherish those connections that we have in this conversation. So really appreciate it, and good luck to you and your future endeavor that you are actually starting this week. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. I really enjoyed this conversation.
That's great.
Great.